Hello friends, and welcome to Sterile Field Guide, a podcast dedicated to medical student general surgical education. I'm Alex, and I'll be your guide. Hello friends, welcome back. In this episode, we are going to talk about basic tips for surviving your surgery clerkship. This is going to be another shorty episode, so I hope that you have some stuff that you need to get done and don't want to listen to me for very long. I think the surgery clerkship, especially for me, it was my first clerkship, was a little bit difficult to adjust to. I don't typically have a problem working long hours or working hard, and so that part wasn't as hard for me, but there are some cultural things. There are things like taking care of your body that are hard to do when you are in the hospital for a majority of your waking hours. And so I wish that somebody would have sat me down and told me all the things I'm about to tell you. So I hope that this is helpful for you and gives you a nice orientation into what you should expect from your surgery clerkship. So I want to tell you sort of straight up, the hours are typically very long, especially if you are at a center where there are a lot of surgeries. I think it is not the norm for the hours to be short. I do know some people at a different school who were on their pediatrics rotation or their like pediatric surgery rotation, and there's only one surgeon and they didn't have any patients, and so they were getting out at noon every day. That is abnormal. I would expect the expected, expect the hours to be long. I would also expect, if you want to perform well, to show up early, leave late, those sorts of things, like basic tenets of hard work and grit, those sorts of things. I think that's what the surgery clerkship is made of. I think some things to think about are hopefully not giving up too much sleep, giving up too much of eating and drinking and moving your body if those things are important to you. I hope at least sleeping, eating, and drinking are important to you, and some form of movement, whether that be going to the gym or dancing or walking, those sorts of things, to sort of keep you sane. Those things can be hard, so we'll sort of talk about a few of those things. So starting off with sleeping, I think just basic sleep hygiene, you probably all know this, but making sure that your room isn't like 1,000,000 degrees, so having like a cool sleep environment, making sure it's quiet and dark. If you are, for some reason, sleeping during the day, if you are on nights, having a sleep mask can be helpful if you're not very good at sleeping during the day. For some reason, I knock out during the day and I do not require a sleep mask, so hopefully you are one of the lucky few. But your sleep schedule can get all kinds of messed up, especially if you're not used to going to bed early or waking up late. Those sorts of things can really mess you up. I know that when I was a second year doing this, I got some melatonin and I would wear a sleep mask, and I would try to do like a bedtime routine before I went to bed, even if it was a different time, to sort of clue my body into like, yes, we are going to sleep. I sometimes feel like stretching for 5 or 10 minutes, even though that sounds very woo-woo, was like a great way to tell my body that it is time to relax, especially if I was going to bed at a weird hour because I was getting up at a weird hour. Those sorts of things can definitely happen on your surgery clerkship. So figuring out the best way for you to sleep is going to be key. Making sure, obviously, you know this, like you don't need to be drinking caffeine right before you go to bed. Like try to optimize your sleep, because being exhausted is something that is almost guaranteed, and being more exhausted than necessary is something to avoid. The second thing about taking care of your body that's really difficult is eating and drinking. I noticed, especially as a second year, that I had a hard time drinking enough water, enough coffee. Like I would get caffeine headaches at the beginning, and so I feel like trying to maximize your ability to get the nutrients and the hydration that you need as a person early in the day or during your breaks, or figuring out a strategy that works best for you. Because if you are having the same experience as I was, you are just running around all day, and you could go all day long, not have a drink of water, not drink any of your coffee, not have your lunch, not pack your lunch. Like there are so many factors that go into having a difficult time eating and drinking during surgery that it's good to be prepared, because that is not very good for your body, and we would never recommend that for our patients. And so it's good to figure out how to combat that. I feel like as I moved into my 3rd and 4th years, having liquid IV on hand or some sort of rehydration mix, be that like Pedialyte or what have you, whatever drink mix you like to make the water that you do drink a little bit more effective, a little bit easier for your body to like hang on to instead of making you go to the bathroom all the time, which is also something that you sometimes don't get to do a ton on surgery. On every surgery rotation I have been on recently, have had a liquid IV every single morning. And I just feel like it makes me feel better, and maybe it's placebo, but I feel more hydrated and I feel less terrible throughout the day. I am the type of person when I am dehydrated, get like terrible stomach pains, and so that does not bode well for me if I'm not drinking enough water. So liquid IV every day for me. I am not sponsored. I truly am a big fan. I love the strawberry ones the best, but they have a lot of good flavors. I would also say making eating as easy as possible, or making snacks as easy as possible, is something to consider. I have found that having like a protein shake handy, especially ones that like don't need to be refrigerated, they're better when they're refrigerated, but like portable, easy to have in your bag. You can have them wherever you are. That same thing goes with like snacks or bars, those sorts of things. Just having something on hand if you forget your lunch, or if you're super hungry, or for some reason you are in the hospital way longer than you ever expected to be, you have something to eat. You do not need to deny yourself. Also, the same goes like if having the pre-made snacks or whatever is not sort of something that you're interested in, having some money on hand so you can go to the cafeteria and get something warm or get something fresh, that is also something I would recommend. Just have some way to have like a backup for taking care of yourself if for some reason the lunch you packed is terrible. You didn't bring your lunch. You forgot it on the counter. You're starving, whatever. Have some backup plan for like feeding yourself if you are starving, because there's nothing like being sleep deprived, dehydrated, miserably hungry, and scrubbed in to a Whipple. So like, don't let that happen to you, friend. Do not let that happen to you. I personally, for like the shakes and stuff that I like, I have been doing the Fairlife like 30-gram protein chocolate milky things that I've been getting at Costco, which I am a big fan of. When I was on my liver transplant rotation, I had one every single day, and it saved my life. It would sometimes be the only thing I ate before like 6 p.m., but it was something. I had a liquid IV and a chocolate milk every day, every single day, like clockwork. So that is something that I have found to be really helpful. Doesn't have to be that brand, doesn't have to be anything that I recommend, but having something on hand is helpful. I also think those are delicious. Another thing, this is something that I struggle with a whole lot when I am on surgical rotations, which soon will be my whole life, is movement. So I feel like for me, I have a background in powerlifting, and before busy rotations, or when I'm not on busy rotations, I'm in the gym all the time. It is so hard to prioritize going to the gym or doing any sort of movement when you've been on your feet all day, you haven't eaten, you haven't drank, you're exhausted, you just want to go to bed. It's very hard to take care of your body in that way, but also it's awful to just like waste away and lose all your progress, and also your body just likes moving. So remember, I think my biggest tip for this is like, remember, things do not have to be perfect, and they also don't have to be the way that they were before you were this busy. So for example, sometimes I gaslight myself into not going to the gym or not exercising because I will only be able to do it for this many minutes, and it's not my typical hour and a half, and I won't be able to do all of this stuff before and after that I normally like to do, which is fine, because 15 minutes is greater than 0 minutes, and 30 minutes is greater than 15 minutes, and all these things. So any sort of thing that you can do, even though it isn't exactly what you were doing when you had nothing else to do all day long, is okay. And like, gaslighting yourself out of a healthy opportunity for yourself, if it's something that you enjoy doing, is something that you may find yourself doing. So I would recommend like recentering, reframing. It is okay for you to not work out for 3 hours. And if you can't work out for 3 hours, not working out at all doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So find ways to compromise with yourself and figure out a way to fit things in that you enjoy. It doesn't have to be exercising. This could be anything, any sort of hobby that you have. Find a way to fit that in, even if it looks a little bit different from when you were less busy. Because this, at some point, if you're going into surgery, if you're going into any sort of medicine, your life will be busy and chaotic. And if we cannot find balance now, when will we? So figuring those skills out and figuring out how to prioritize early is going to be really helpful for you. They're starting to trim the grass outside, so I'm sorry if it gets loud, but we're almost done. I think another thing that makes being a medical student difficult and can make your surgery clerkship hard is when you do not feel like you are a part of the team. I feel like my very worst experiences in the hospital are where I felt ignored or like useless or in the way, or the residents, God bless their souls, they're so busy, didn't go out of their way or even take a second to acknowledge my existence or care that I was there, or said something snarky to me, which was not well received. So I think the best you can to be a part of the team, be engaged, those sorts of things can be really helpful for making your time in the hospital useful to you. So like, be engaged, even if you're not interested in surgery. Thank you for listening if you're not interested in surgery and you're just here for the tips. But be engaged, ask questions. This may be the last time that you'll ever do surgery if this is not something that you want to do. So try to learn as much as you can from every rotation, especially if doing things that you'll never do again. I think it's just an awesome opportunity for you to ask questions, figure things out, and be a better doctor when you get there because you understand the ins and outs of a whole bunch of different services. I would also say residents love this when you're asking questions, I don't know about that, but residents love engaged medical students. So if you act like you don't care or you truly don't care, that is not a great look for you, and people don't love working with people who don't want to be there. But also, speaking of not wanting to be there, I personally would never recommend you asking to leave. I think different people have different philosophies on this, so this is very much a personal feeling. I think clerkship year is hard and unfortunately can be very difficult, but I think asking to leave is always a bad look from my perspective. And I think wanting to leave early, it's like 11 a.m., maybe that's not the right time. Obviously, if it's like 8 p.m. and nothing's going on and people forgot that you were there, it is okay to be like, hey, may I leave? Is that okay? I'm going to go home. Like, that sort of thing is fine. But like, while things are happening or middle of the day, or it's only 2:00 in the afternoon, like, stay until 4. It's not going to hurt you to do a little bit of U-World in the hospital. People will let you go when things aren't happening unless they've like truly forgotten that you're there. I think it is in your best interest and looks best for your image. And I know that it's silly to like pretend to care for your image, but that's sort of the game that we're playing with medicine. So just like, be judicious of when you're asking to leave, because it just doesn't look awesome. Doesn't look awesome, doesn't feel awesome. I just wouldn't recommend doing that. And some residents that I've spoken to, they like notice when you let yourself leave the hospital early. Like, when you don't ask, they notice when you don't show up. And when you don't come back, they know when you show up early, they know when you don't show up early. Like, people are sort of paying attention, and not in a way that's like, oh, this med student is the worst, like they're here 15 minutes instead of 20 minutes early. Not in that sort of way, but like, people notice effort and people notice disinterest, and asking to leave sort of expresses some disinterest. So just like, do your work, grind if you got to. If you have a pre-existing arrangement, like a meeting or something that you really have to go to, like an appointment, absolutely ask. But just asking to ask because you don't want to be there is just, it's just not a good look. Finally, my final piece of advice is just like, be a normal human. I feel like sometimes on clerkships, we get like all up in our heads and we have to be this like super cool, super smart, really professional, really respectful person, which all of those things are true, but I think thinking all of those things and knowing that people are watching you can make you get a little bit crazy. And med students can be like weird and awkward because they're like, there's so many things going through your head. So just like, try to relax, be professional, be respectful, but like, be a normal human. I feel like my very favorite experiences as a medical student happened after my clerkship year, where I learned to relax a little bit and be myself in a way that is professional in the hospital. So like, if you're wilding out, maybe that's not the version of yourself to be in the hospital, but like, you can have a personality and be a real human. That is fine. Just sort of, I would approach your teams at first with a lot of professional air about you, and make sure that you have declared yourself as a professional and respectful person. And then after you have proven yourself, it is okay to sort of relax and be a normal human and keep those things up, but like, let them know that you are also a cool person. That is fine. I think. I know that's like confusing. The advice that we got at the beginning of clerkships is like residents are not your friends and they don't want to be your friends. And this is a totally professional relationship, which is true. This is a professional relationship, and like, don't be like flirting with your residents and texting them and all the, I don't know, weird dynamics. Don't put yourself in that position. But I feel like it is okay for you to be a person because you were chosen to go to the medical school that you go to, because you are the person that you are, not because you can answer, hopefully not because you can answer a whole bunch of questions correctly. Like, people want to know who you are. People want to work with you as a person. At some point, you're going to have to be yourself. So I would keep that in mind as you are moving throughout your clerkship space. And it is hard because I know that you feel like you're in the way, and I definitely did as well. It is hard to feel like it's okay to be yourself and you have all of these pressures on you. And so you're like, what does that even mean? So that's okay if that's like not where you are, but I will just give you a little picture of the future when it is more fun, when you can relax a bit. So I hope that happens for you soon, and I hope that this was helpful for you in thinking about how to survive your clerkship and take care of yourself during this time that has an end to it. So have a lovely time. I hope that you love your surgery clerkship. I'll talk to you later. Bye. That's it for today's podcast. You can support this podcast and receive exclusive educational content on Patreon, and find us on Instagram at Sterile Field Guide. Questions and requests can be submitted to our Gmail at sterilefieldguide@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and until next time, may your retraction be superb and your suture tails be the perfect length.